Good afternoon and welcome. It's Friday afternoon and we appreciate you all being here and joining us. I'm Joanna Lyle. I work in the Office of Philanthropy and Alumni Relations, and I'm happy for all of you to be with us today for Medical Breakthroughs, Advancing Discovery with Purpose. It is wonderful to be together with many of our Wake Forest University School of Medicine alumni this weekend as they join us for 3 full days of fun and entertainment for their alumni weekend. So welcome to those of you coming back home this weekend. I also want to say a special welcome to community leaders who have joined with us today, and I hope that you enjoy the program as well. Today, we will highlight Wake Forest University School of Medicine's role as the academic core of Advocate Health, and we'll showcase our faculty advancing life-saving innovative research that reaches far beyond our campus, improving care, outcomes, and quality of life for patients, families, and the communities that we all care deeply about. This afternoon, you will hear from our dean, who will moderate a discussion at the end, and also from 3 distinguished researchers from Wake Forest University School of Medicine. Dr. Boulware is the dean of Wake Forest University School of Medicine, executive vice president of academic health affairs at Wake Forest University, and our chief academic officer of Advocate Health. And she will set the stage today, connecting our research mission to Advocate Health's commitment to discovery, education, and improved health for all. Following Dr. Boulware, you'll hear from Dr. Oz Agbilgich, professor of cardiovascular medicine and leader within the Center for Artificial Intelligence Research at the School of Medicine. He will share how advances in data science and AI are transforming cardiovascular research and care. Dr. Anthony Atala is the G-Link professor and director for the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine, and he will discuss his groundbreaking work in regenerative medicine and how he and his team make discoveries in this space, redefining what is possible for patients worldwide. Dr. Laura Baker, Associate Director of the Wake Forest Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, Professor of Internal Medicine, Section on Gerontology and Geriatric Medicine, and Public Health Sciences, will speak to critical research around lifestyle interventions that can significantly improve cognitive function in older adults at risk for cognitive decline and dementia. Together, these 3 presentations will illustrate how discovery at Wake Forest University School of Medicine is purposeful, patient-oriented, and deeply connected to improving health across the lifespan, and how our alumni and community partners play an essential role in that mission. Thank you again today for being part of this important conversation, and we hope this program informs and inspires you and deepens your connection with Wake Forest University School of Medicine. And Dr. Boulware, welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Joanna, for that introduction, and welcome everybody. It's wonderful to be with you today. And to kick off Medical Alumni Weekend, having alumni here is just incredibly special for us, a special time for us to welcome back our family and to also share with you all the exciting things that are happening in the Wake Forest University School of Medicine. I'm particularly excited about this session, which talks about medical breakthroughs with purpose. That's really a defining feature of what we do at the Wake Forest University School of Medicine, is to drive discovery, education, and innovation with purpose. And so that really is so important because our purpose is to improve health and improve the lives of every individual that we touch, their families, and our communities. Just to point out that we have so much happening in the Wake Forest University School of Medicine, it's just really awesome and hard to wrap your mind around it. I talk a lot about our research and our discoveries going from cells to communities. Our investigators, our faculty, our educators, our learners are doing all kinds of incredible work, all the way from understanding what molecules make our health, drive our health, all the way to how individuals interact with technology, all the way to how we're going to develop cures through clinical trials and discover new drugs and new therapies, all the way to how we need to interact with one another to keep our brains, our lives, our bodies healthy, and then even how we focus on creating health within our communities. So our work really spans the full spectrum from birth all the way through the end of life on how we can remain as healthy as possible. We've just finished, actually, within the School of Medicine, a whole month of something called Celebrate Research, which is a way that we celebrate research and the impact that the school of medicine's discoveries have had across our entire nation. And when I say our nation, it's because we're a part of Advocate Health, which is now one of the largest health systems in the nation and covers 6 states. And our school is what we call the academic core of this health system. And so what it means is that the discoveries and the work that we're doing here, the teaching, the training, the education that we're doing in our school can spread all the way throughout, touching individuals not just in Winston-Salem or Charlotte or North Carolina, but going to multiple states across our nation. So now our impact, which has always been awesome, is even amplified further. So it's really an incredible opportunity for us and an exciting time for us to see how the School of Medicine, based here in Winston-Salem, fuels all of this discovery and innovation across so many. I do want to say that today you're going to be particularly, I'm particularly honored to introduce this really august panel. These are 3 leaders that are really doing incredible, groundbreaking work, ranging from focus on how we're learning about using artificial intelligence and all the data that's generated to really improve how we're delivering healthcare, to regenerating, now I want to call it regenerating life because Dr. Atala really does, he does an amazing work on how we utilize and take cellular technologies and regenerate organs, creating health, doing all kinds of incredible work. So it's just really an honor to have that. Dr. Baker leading in the areas of aging and health and brain health and resilience and Alzheimer's. Really, these areas are critical areas that we all need help in, and that we need that not just here, but across the nation and across the globe. So I'm incredibly honored to have this august set of speakers here. I think that's what also, though, is really amazing is that these folks are so busy and they take the time out of their busy schedules to come and talk to us about what they're doing in the discovery. And I think that's a really defining feature of the Wake Forest University School of Medicine. And if we're here longer, Bowman Gray, which is that personal touch, that commitment to community, that commitment to speaking with people about the discoveries, not being so far away, but really trying to get that information in our hands, how we can use it. So I'm very proud and delighted to be a part of this panel and looking forward to the discussions. So Dr. Akbilgic, you want to come up first? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolivar, for having me here. Thank you all very much. It's an honor to be in front of you. So today, before skipping the AI, I want to start with a story. Now, imagine a 65-year-old male with a history of smoking for 40 years. Started expressing like an extreme cough, like a shortness of breath, going to family medicine, nothing, cough syrup, everything gets worse. 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, finally they order an X-ray, nothing. After 3 months, nothing is resolved, another X-ray, nothing. After a year, finally they say, well, maybe we should do a CT, tomography, to look at deeper, diagnosed with very late stage small cell carcinoma, lung cancer. At this stage, the 5-year survival rate is 10%. Literally 94% of people diagnosed at that stage doesn't make another 5 years. Well, if you look at it, there are a lot happened, a lot of opportunities missed here. So first of all, a patient, 40 years of smoking history, presented to a physician who has only 5 minutes per patient. So it's easy to get mad at the physician. But it is not. They only have 5 minutes. They don't have time to go through the history. And probably that the radiologist reading the X-rays didn't have enough time to read the X-ray in detail until when there's a CT, shows everything more clearly. There were a lot of missed opportunities. That diagnosis could be much earlier. But in the same physicians, by the way, this person is my father. Got the diagnosis in 2017. And I'm on the lucky side. The same physicians, once they know what was wrong, they also can create miracles. He's alive. I didn't know that he could see my kids. I have 1-year-old and 6-year-old kids. I'm so excited to go visit them in Turkey. next month, and he's with us. But we should not leave it to miracles. We should let data speak. We should bring more information in front of our patients. We think that this is in Turkey. It doesn't happen in the United States. We are wrong. 50% of the US counties have no single cardiologist, not a one. 85% of the rural counties in the United States has no single cardiologist. So there are a lot of opportunities here AI can help, not to replace them, but to make them more informed, to better utilize their time. This is what we are doing. It's a real motivation for me, how we can use technology and AI to use lowest cost possible, most scalable data points that are very easy to collect anywhere in the clinic, at home, and interpret it in a way so that we can bring those patients in front of our physicians who are there to create miracles, but maybe we shouldn't wait for this. So specifically in my lab and in Wake Forest, what we are doing is we are utilizing electrocardiogram data, one of the lowest cost, most available data that is available. And I'm happy to say that in this electrocardiogram-based AI's research, we are already in the forefront of in the nation with the research we are doing. We have one of the largest and most diverse repository in the Wake Forest with 20 million electrocardiograms. Why do I mention this number? Because that's what AI needs. You can think of AI as a kid. My kid just now can say spiders. He loves spiders, but it took him years to say that spider. He started with skygogi. Finally says spiders. How many iterations it takes? He said something, skygo, we said, no, it is spider. He heard it from imagine a trial error. How many times this kid heard, said it was wrong, tried to correct himself. AI is the same thing. More data we show to AI, better it learns. And then it comes to a point that it sees the patterns that we don't see. And it sees the details that we don't see or we do not have enough time to see. And then it can give us more informed decision from this data point. And specifically, we are focusing a lot on the heart failure, one of the leading cause of that. And there is literature showing that earlier we bring patients in front of our physician with the diagnosis, better the outcome. 5-year survival rate is 50% in heart failure. And it is mostly because it requires echocardiogram, cardiac MRI for diagnosis. But now I'm really proud to say that we have now AI models that are trained on millions of electrocardiograms that shows that we can identify patients with heart failure years before they get the diagnosis. Do we leave it there? No, we have great people, great leaders here. They have the vision. No, we are going to deploy it. Now we are deploying it in one of our family medicine. Hopefully in June it is kicking off. Whenever a patient comes to our clinic with hypertension or dyspnea, they would get electrocardiogram, standard of care. AI would run on the background and send, if heart failure detected, send the recommendation for other clinical confirmatory tests, lab works, echocardiograms, etc. But do we leave it there? But a lot happens when we don't see the patients. We are talking about when patients come to clinic, but sometimes they don't come. Sometimes they cannot come. But they can generate electrocardiogram on their wrist. So a lot of you know this like Apple Watch. But this is also, it looks like a classical watch. It also generates ECG. Basically now, we also have systems, mobile applications that can get this one-time 30 seconds ECG from your watch and detects this heart failure with the exact same accuracy. Now imagine the opportunity. Now we are not only talking about our patients who are aware of their health or who are lucky enough to be in front of our physician. Now we are talking about anybody who can have access to $100, $150 watch who can generate ECG. Can we identify them earlier? Can we bring them earlier in front of our patients? But if I may just take another step back to the AI, I know AI has been around, but we mostly have been hearing about AI last 3-4 years through the ChatGPT. more than 40 million people in the United States every day seek care, advice in ChatGPT, put their personal information on ChatGPT, and get advice. It does a good job, yes, but it is not personal. What ChatGPT is, it's an AI model that learns from millions of billions of open source documents on the internet with good and bad, and then gives you what is approximate decision. So now what our dream is that what if we can do much more? What if we can do a ChatGPT, Wake Forest ChatGPT, whenever our patients record the data on their watch or their wearable records the data, and then they just express their symptoms. Now imagine this system connects to their EHR data, gather all their clinical history, and now create advice that is specific to that patient who generated this data, not like a general information driven from millions of billions of text. This is the vision we have now. We really have this vision that we don't want to be only in one of the place forefront of this. We want to be number one. I believe we have this talent. We have the data we need. We have the leadership vision. And I believe we will get there. This is our dream. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atala.
Thank you, Dr. Boulware. I just want to thank the Beth Alexander and her Office of Alumni Relations, and Joanna Lyle and Ned Crowder and the Office of Philanthropy, and of course our very own, very special Dean, Dean Boulware, who does so much work for us across the whole advocate system. And thank you all for being here. You're all alumni, so we are so happy to have you back and see what we're doing. So what I wanted to share with you today is really what we're doing at the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. And this is actually a picture of our institute if you haven't been there. If you haven't been there, we invite you to come and take a tour. And this is a 5-story building, and we basically do everything here from the idea to the proof of concept to all the way to the actual production of what we're going to deliver to the patients. We have an FDA-compliant manufacturing facility where we actually produce the product for the patient. We also direct the clinical trials from this site. So the only thing we don't do in this building is actually to treat the patient, but we do everything from the idea all the way to the product. And just in June of last year, we were very fortunate to be expanding our footprint across the ecosystem that we're building here in Winston-Salem. So what is RegenMed? RegenMed is basically this area that combines either cells or materials or cells and materials together. And this whole other area we call enabling technologies, as you see here in this little diagram. I'm going to talk to you about each of these areas, specifically about 3D printing. So I'm going to tell you how we got there. So at the current time, we've translated 18 of our applications into patients. We actually just did our 18th application just in October of last year. And it takes a village to get these technologies all the way to the patient. And what you see here is a strategy that we use for most of our technologies. So we basically go to the patient, we take a very small biopsy of tissue from the patient, right there, and we then extract the cells outside the body, and we then expand the cells outside the body in tissue culture plates, and we then combine them with biomaterials, and we then create tissue that we can place back into the patient. So it's very much like, I always like to say, it's very much like baking a layer cake. We're placing cells one layer at a time and putting in this oven-like device. Of course, it's much more complicated than that, but it sounds good when I say it. So this is actually the first organ that we implanted was the bladder. And this was, in fact, the first organ implanted in a patient. And if we had known back then what we know now, we would have never started with a bladder, because the bladder is actually quite a complex organ. Flat structures like skin are the least complex. Tubular structures like blood vessels are the second level of complexity because they're tubes and they have to remain open, allowing air or fluid to go through. Hollow non-tubular organs like the bladder, the stomach, they're the most They're the third level of complexity because the architecture is more complex, requires more cell types, and the most complex are the solid organs, like the liver, the kidney, the heart. And so we did that for the bladder, as you see here, and this is actually on the second panel, we did this preclinical studies, and then on the second panel, you see this three-dimensional bladder. That's the X-ray of the engineered bladder. And then on the final panel on the right, you see the actual X-ray of that bladder we implanted a series of these in patients, and that was published in that journal in the Lancet with a 5-year follow-up for these patients. This then allowed us to go into other structures, like you see here, the urethra, which is a channel that connects the bladder to the outside of the body. So that's a tubular structure. And we were then able to use the very same strategy to create these organs. Same thing, we take a biopsy from the patient, we expand the cells outside the body, we create the structure in the form of a tube, and the materials that we use look very much like your shirt or your blouse in terms of the materials. We just shape them differently depending on the organ we're trying to create. And those cells get placed on those scaffolds, and then the structure goes into the patient. But those materials that we put in, unlike your shirt or your blouse, they actually dissolve over time. They're like stitches that we use in surgery, very similar materials. You know, when you go to surgery and they put stitches on your skin and they go away over time, the very similar materials, they do the same thing. So you're probably wondering, well, how does the structure remain inside the body then if materials are going away? And all these materials go away within 6 months. So what actually happens inside the body? Well, once those cells on that scaffold and that material inside your body, once those cells start to sense that that material is going away, guess what the cells do? They secrete their very own material, their very own bridge. That's what your body does. Your cells in your body are actually the cells that make the bridge inside your body. And that's exactly what happens here. And 6 months later, you're left with your cells and your very own bridge. And so because the cells are your own, they won't reject. So that's another advantage of the technology. And we then did another organ where these organs were not there. This is actually a condition where the patients are born without the organ. And we engineered the organ and then put it back into the patient. And we just implanted one of these organs just 4 weeks ago. So we continue to do these in patients. And then we can also use other technologies where we use the cells with materials, but instead of creating the structure, we actually just place them in the area that they're needed. And we're doing that now, for example, for the knee. For patients who need knee replacement because they need cartilage, what they're doing with a knee replacement, they're putting a piece of metal or very hard plastics. The strategy here is we take the cell, same strategy, we take the cells from the patient, we expand the cells outside the body, we drive those cells to become cartilage cells, and we then place those cells into the knee area. And what you're seeing here on the far left, that's the paper that we published, our clinical series. These were 10 patients that was published in Science Advances, 10 patients that received this treatment. And on the second panel on the bottom, you see the white area, that's the area of the erosion. And we then placed those cells with the hydrogel, just a single injection, into these patients, and you can see on the last panel there that cartilage and bone has been regenerated. So these were patients with end-stage 4 knee disease, which is the most severe, showing both cartilage and bone regeneration. So that's another technology we're advancing to with another phase with the FDA. And then finally, to get you to where I'm going to go with you with these technologies, which is the kidney. So I'm just mentioning a few of these technologies for you, but same strategy here for the kidney. You may not realize this, but 88% of patients waiting for a transplant are actually waiting for a kidney. 88%. The other 12% are waiting for heart, liver, lungs, and pancreas. but 88% are waiting for a kidney. It's an organ of most demand. So we started working on this back in but gosh, I don't even want to tell you, because then you'll know. But it's been decades. And finally, we got, after over 20 years of work, we finally got this technology to patients. So the strategy is the same. We take a small sample of tissue from the patient with a needle biopsy. We then expand those cells outside the body. We then combine those cells with different materials, and we then place those cells right back into the kidney. Now, the kidneys fail because you get down to below 10% of your kidney function. So nature made us with a 10x reserve. So really, I always like to say, you have a patient out there, a family member, they go out and play tennis every week, they're perfectly fine. All of a sudden, they go to play tennis this particular day and they get chest pain. They get rushed to the hospital, they do an x-ray, and they find out that 90% of their heart blood vessels are occluded. Guess what? They didn't get pain when it was 60% obstructed or 70% obstructed. They only got the pain when the patient was over 90% obstructed. So we have a 10x reserve, and the same thing for the kidney. So what we're doing here is really refilling the tank. We're actually placing more tissue back into that kidney so that kidney can function. And that's what you see here on the bottom right. That's the strategy. And that technology is now in phase 3 clinical trials. Basically, phase 1 and 2 trials have been completed. And there are over 120 patients out now, over 80 over 3 years, showing that that this technology can prevent progression to dialysis. And now phase 3 clinical trials are ongoing. This is now in another structure where they're conducting clinical trials in over 17 countries, actually, in over 30 sites. And because they need the FDA first asked for 1,000 patients, but they now decreased it, seeing the data for the phase 2. So, but it's still over 500 patients that need to be done. So this is still in progress right now. And then just to mention that there are a lot of other technologies, as I mentioned, but it's just an example of some of the technologies that we've been able to get to patients at this point. So, to printing then. So how did this start? You can see this basically inkjet cartridge. And instead of using ink, we're going to use cells and a hydrogel and a gelatin material. And we modified this printer with a 3D elevator. So every time the printhead would go through, the elevator would lower itself, and this is a 2-chamber heart that you just saw, printed 2-dimensionally to create 3D hearts. And these are the cardiomyocytes. At first, they would beat erratically, and then they would beat in unison. And the reason we did this was because everything we had done by hand. And we knew that if we really wanted to advance these technologies, we needed to scale them up. And so that's when we had the idea, why don't we just combine these hydrogels and cells to create these structures? Now, these structures did not have the integrity necessary for surgical implantation. So this particular printer is now at the Healthcare Museum in the DC area. It's relegated to a shelf. But we now build much more sophisticated printers that you see here, where we spent 14 years building these printers that would create structures that would have the integrity necessary for surgical implantation. And those printers, that work was published in Nature Biotechnology. We called it the iTop, or the Integrated Tissue and Organ Printer. And this printer actually allowed us to create 3-dimensional skin. This is a paper that we published in Science Translational Medicine, showing that we could create 3-dimensional skin with 3 layers, 6 different cell types. We can put pigment in the skin, hair follicles in the skin, and you can build it off the shelf. And then basically, through this printing technology, we entered what was called the NASA Vascular Challenge. And what NASA wanted was they wanted a piece of tissue that would be created outside the body and would remain functional for at least a month outside the body. That was a very big challenge for us, because everything I've shown you up to this point, we create the structure and we put it right back into the patient. But to wait a month outside the body, that was, difficult because we're counting on this tissue to basically go back in the body and get reconnected, right? So all the wiring and all the plumbing can get back into that tissue right away so that the tissue can survive. So why was NASA, and why are they still interested in this? Because of the mission to Mars. It takes basically 6 months to get to Mars. And for space travelers, if something goes wrong in space, they need to make sure that they can be taken care of. And so how about having a printer up in space that can print these tissues? So that was a strategy. So basically, this competition, it was supposed to be a 5-year challenge, but because of COVID, ended up being a 7-year challenge. 22 teams enter the competition. We basically entered twice, and you saw the results already in the slide. Basically, there were 13 teams standing before the 1 year before the challenge was over. 6 months before the challenge was over, there were 7 teams standing. We entered twice because we had 2 different approaches we wanted to try, and luckily both approaches made it to the end. And the interesting thing is that a 3rd prize was not awarded because none of the other teams were able to achieve it. So that was a big win for Wake Forest. The interesting thing about this is that with these technologies, once we got these technologies to the end goal, then they allowed us to take these technologies up into the space station, which is what you see here. This is actually the Axiom spaceship on the bottom right, and the Axiom spaceship is taking off. That was in August of 2023, taking our 3D printed liver structures up into space and into the International Space Station. And we just had another payload that went up in October of 2025 that we just brought back last month. So it was up actually in the space station until just a few weeks ago. And we have 3 more missions scheduled already to go up into the space station to keep these technologies moving forward with these printers. So it's basically all about printing these structures. So now that you know how we do the printing, I can tell you what our next step is, which is basically these printing technologies for the kidney. And so I mentioned to you how we're actually taking these biopsies, these very small samples of tissue from patients with a needle biopsy, and basically taking those cells and expanding them outside the body, and then creating this structure that you put back into the kidney. But when we place those cells back into the kidney, we're randomly placing these cells, right? Because we are doing this with imaging, but you can only do so much with that. So the strategy then is, why don't we print these structures for the patient? And so the strategy here is you take the same biopsy from the patient, you expand the cells in the same manner, but instead of actually just expanding these cells and then inserting them into the patient, we're going to basically print the structure that fits that patient's kidney specifically. And we can insert it right where we need it. And that's basically what it is. So, and now we're very lucky to get a $24.8 million program from ARPA-H to do this. We launched that program a few months ago here at Wake Forest. And this on the top shows you this 3D imaging that occurs. This is present in every major hospital now, where you can go and get an X-ray. This particular one is called Terra Recon, where you can do a 3-dimensional rendering of what these structures look like. And then you can see from the imaging what the patient's kidney looks like. And we then, based on this technology, we developed our own software program that is able to download this data digitally into our very own printer, and we can then print the structure specifically for that patient. And that's what you're seeing down here. And basically, we call it a Lego approach because we're printing Lego structures that we can then place for the patient. And you can see here how we print those structures right there. And we basically allow that to be created and fit into the patient on this Lego type approach that I just mentioned to you. So to summarize then, we have a lot of technologies going on. The next frontier for us is, how do we scale these technologies up? And the way we do that is with 3D printing. And this is actually just a picture, because I really want to recognize the amazing team that we have at WFirm. Truly, some of the best and brightest from all over the globe. And it's been a very international crowd. We've actually had folks from over 60 countries join our work here at Wake Forest. And they're experts in molecular biology, cell biology, physics, AI, everything goes into it. And so we're very, very lucky to have such an amazing team here at Wake Forest, and we are very lucky to have you as our alumni. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Powell. Dr. Baker?
That was amazing, really impressive. So I'm here to talk to you about something totally different. I study behavior and how we can work with people to make incremental changes that stick over time to support brain health. It's not all showing up. Okay, that's okay. I can fill in the boxes there. We have a significant problem in the U.S., but across the globe. The numbers of people with cognitive impairment are growing every day. In large part, we are learning that a large part of this epidemic is related to the health of the bodies. Our American culture, and now because of American infiltration across the globe in our particular cultures, our food preferences and so forth, that the number of people who are developing cognitive impairment due to medical health issues is growing exponentially. So the goal of our program is to look at how can we change your risk of developing cognitive impairment through changing of behavior. For years, we did not have any medications for people with cognitive impairment, so people with pre-Alzheimer's disease, dementia. We have some new FDA medications approved now, but for people who are cognitively okay, but at risk, mama and daddy have cognitive impairment. I have a long line of folks in my family with cognitive impairment. We have had nothing to help these individuals to reduce their risk over time. So this was the goal of our program, was to test whether a lifestyle change, a rigorous lifestyle intervention, could change the trajectory of cognitive health in older people who are at risk for cognitive decline. So our goals were to make it big. We're going to do a big study. We want a definitive study, so when we have a result, we do not need to do this study again. Our second goal was we got to make sure that we have representation in our study. We have to have all microcultures within the U.S. represented. So diversity was a high priority for us, and it had to be sustainable. Because if we develop something within the walls of a hospital that is not sustainable in our community, why are we doing this work? It is for public health that we do this work. And so that was kind of our goal with the U.S. Pointer study. I just want to tell you before I move on, U.S. Pointer is only one study of 68 different studies, similar studies across the world. The first study that was done to show, wow, lifestyle intervention without medications on board could actually protect, increase resilience to cognitive decline. That was done in Finland. The Alzheimer's Association, in partnership with Wake Forest, wanted to test whether, okay, that works for the Finns, but we are very different. We park the closest, we travel for 10 minutes extra in a parking lot to get the closest spot to the front door. We don't ride our bikes everywhere. We are busy, we are tired, we go to get the fastest food that we can get and get home and feed the family. We have very different microcultures here than the Finns. We needed to test whether this lifestyle intervention, can it help us? What's the generalizability of this kind of an intervention? So the missing circles are a person exercise. It's kind of a key part that's missing. A person, just imagine, there's a person exercising in the first circle. Then the second one represents nutrition. These are our 4 pillars that we focus on in the U.S. Pointer study. The third one is cognitive engagement, challenging yourself, but social connection as well. And the last one is knowing your numbers, your health metrics. So many of our patients, when we see them, they say, oh, the doctor knows my blood pressure, but I have no idea what it is. We want to change that. So what we did is we enrolled 2,111 people across the United States from diverse communities. We had racial, ethnic representation that matches the United States. We had diverse communities from different parts of the country. People in California live life differently than people in North Carolina. It was important that we had that kind of diversity as well. It was a two-year randomized clinical trial. These people could not pick which group they're going to go into. They were all at risk for cognitive decline due to, I'll just list a couple of them, but they were sedentary, not regular exercisers. They were not already eating a healthy diet, and most of them had some borderline cardiovascular risks. Many of them, 80%, had family history of memory impairment. So you can get into the study if you had risk. We only had 2 years to watch you, so we needed people who were at greater risk for declining within those 2 years. Our intervention was what we refer to as a multi-domain intervention, so not just exercise, not just nutrition, but it's the whole package. And at the time, it's the standard of care, right? You want to get a healthier body, your doctor says, you need to move more, you need to have eat a more colorful plate of food, you need to take better care of your heart, and you need to stay not so isolated. You need to connect with people. But no one had ever tested that in a trial. And so, yes, it's a great recommendation, but there's no movement in the people's minds to actually change their behavior. We have to have science behind it in order to get people to make a change. So that was our goal. So our two interventions, real quick, that we had a self-guided group and a structured group. So the self-guided group was basically that. Participants were able to self-guide themselves through their own interventions. They make their own decisions about what they want to change. They hold themselves accountable. And what we provided is some minimal support with other participants in the same group, but also like a coach that met with these participants 6 times over 2 years. By contrast, the structured group got a detailed program of exercise, the nutrition diet to follow, how to stay engaged with other people, how to stay cognitively stimulated, and also they had to check their blood pressure on a regular basis. So I'm just trying to show you here that we had a lot of rigor in what we wanted to deliver here. We had to have nice separation between the groups, but we had to have a lot of accountability. That was a key element. So this is what we found. In this trial, both groups improved. Oh, sorry, this is the lines represent how they changed on a single metric of global cognitive function. One score. Every person gets one score, and we watch that score over time. That one score is based on almost an hour and a half of testing. So it's not a simple score, it's a very complex score. So what we saw is both groups improved over time in cognition, that one score. But the structured group, more intensive program that they were giving, more accountability, more support, they had a significant extra benefit than the self-guided group. So I want to point out before I leave, and I hope you remember that the self-guided group, what we did, we helped them. They had to generate their own goals. We gave them some support, but it was more than standard of care. I don't receive the self-guided routine. I wish I would be encouraged to set goals, and I do, but because of what I know. But this self-guided was more than most of our patients are exposed to. What we've been asked over and over is, okay, there's a little extra benefit for the structure group. Is it worth all the time that I spent for 2 years going to all of these meetings and doing all this work? Well, what we estimate is that savings, that benefit for the structured group is about 1 to 2 years slowing of the cognitive clock. 1 to 2 years. And so when we ask, what's the clinical relevance? Where we go is we go to our participants. We say, is that worth it to you? Fortunately, the side effects of these interventions, there was only positive side effects. Our participants love these interventions, and they're still doing them even though the study is over. We've gotten a lot of national attention for the study. We've had over 293 news outlets. And the reason this is important for us, not visibility necessary for the team, But in order to make change, to encourage change of creating a movement in the communities, among people in the U.S., we have to create a movement. And movements can't start in isolation. We have to have visibility that this is real, it was tested in rigorous science, and wow, it's now a recommendation. When we start a movement with high publicity, that is when we're able to see a difference. And then lastly, here's where we are today. So great, we had a positive trial. We showed benefit on cognition. What's next? So if we stop here, we have failed. The whole point of doing clinical trials is to develop new strategies for public health, to improve health for all people, not just those participants. The Alzheimer's Association is leading a national initiative with over 10 different grants across the United States. The goal of the grants is to plan how to implement this pointer structured intervention within communities. So sometimes we're working with public health, but also the majority of our grants are within healthcare systems. So you go see your doctor. Well, if you're identified as someone with risk, you're cognitively okay for now. You are triaged potentially to the pointer prevention program and given resources and support to help you make the changes you make. If we tell people they need to change their ways, you need to move more, you need to eat better, that will fall flat. That will not work. It has to be a program we have learned where there is support, community involved to help people make those changes. One of the hardest things we ever do is form a new habit, right? Forming a new habit is very difficult. We cannot, our older adults in particular, cannot do this by ourselves. So we're trying to figure out how do we push this into healthcare so that it's sustainable, it'll last long past my career, it's feasible, people aren't going to give up, and it's effective, that it is making a significant change over time. So I just want a shout out real quick to what happens here at Wake Forest. This whole study, the hub of this whole story was at Wake Forest. We have an amazing coordinating center with great minds that help us figure out what is the best way to do the strongest, most rigorous trial. If you don't have rigor in your trial, you cannot change healthcare strategy. You cannot. And so it was really important for us that we have the right team in the right place so that we can ultimately find the right intervention for the right setting and the right person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Drs. Akbilgic, Atala, and Baker. These are really incredible presentations, and I learned a lot during them. One of the things that really struck me about all of your presentations was there was a real emphasis on data, gathering the information, and the rigor, and thinking about clinical trials. There was also, I'll save my second part for the next part, and then I'm waiting for you guys to come up with some questions. So this is the time you think about it, and you're going to raise your hand. Can you tell me about explain to us why it's so important to have this rigor, and what that means to have how does Wake Forest help you do that? Dr. Baker, you started off talking about the coordinating. Maybe we'll start from you going this way.
So if you can imagine, I'm going to be real simple, if it's a sloppy study, are you going to believe the results? For us, I'll say one more comment, and then I'm going to say why Wake Forest was important. For me, as the lead investigator, people kept going, are you worried about what you're going to find, all this time that you spent? And I said, no, all we care about right now is running the best study, taking care of our patients, taking care of our study team, so that at the end of the day, whatever we find, it's the truth. That's all we care about, is finding the truth. And the only way to do that is to do the best possible study where you can control all of the noise as much as possible so the signal can shine through. The reason it's important at Wake Forest, what we gained from doing this at Wake Forest, I have to say it's two things. We have the expertise, the coordinating center expertise, and so this is the clinical trials expertise, the data management and tracking expertise, the lifestyle. I have so many people on my team that are from Wake Forest University who are health scientists, exercise science, nutrition folks. We couldn't do this without expertise there. But the other part of this institution that makes it so valuable is we collaborate across 5 different departments, 6 different departments for this study. The collaboration environment in this particular university and institution, healthcare system, is like none other. I've worked at 3 other large institutions, can't name them, but in my career, this institution, its collaborative environment is far, far surpasses the collaborative environment in any other institution I've ever been in.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Tyler?
That was a great answer. You know, when we do translational research, actually, you really have a much higher bar, because you're not, you know, not only do you have to do the hardcore science that you need to do when you're creating a research project, but you're not doing it just for a paper. You're not doing it just for publication. You're doing this work because you know that this work is critical as a foundation where you're building the next level of data and the next level of data till finally you have enough faith to say, you know, the data is so strong, it is now time to take it to the patient. But you never cross that line until you know that you have an amazing chance of success. It would be extremely hard for that technology to fail. And of course, technologies can fail, but you have to do that testing over and over and over again to make sure it happens, because you're put into a patient. You know, this is not an experiment that you're doing in the lab, in a bench. You're doing all these experiments so you can get to that point. And the most nervous we ever are is when we're going to put something for the very first time in the very first patient, because you don't know what's going to happen. But you know, the nice thing about it is that so far it's worked. You know, it's worked every time we've done it, and because of the rigor that is needed to make that happen. And we could not have that rigor if we were not at a place like Wake Forest. And you stole my answer about collaboration. Actually, you didn't steal it, but you had the same idea. I have to tell you what, that's exactly what is great about Wake Forest. And I can tell you, I came from another institution, and the reason why, the deciding factor, I tell this over and over again, the deciding factor that made it easy for me to make the move here was because I realized that if I took my whole operation out of that center and I brought it here, I wouldn't be missing anything, because no one was working with anyone. And so, and I tell that story all the time. This is the place when I came here, everyone wanted to work together. Everyone places their egos aside, and they do what's best for the patient. And that is Wake Forest.
Great answer. Thank you.
I mean, if I may follow up from where you left off, actually, I joined Wake Forest 5 years ago, and seeing all these like wonderful people, researchers, that could work anywhere in the world with that quality skills they have, but they decide to stay here for last 20, 30 years of their career. It says a lot. Now I'm learning more, actually, why. Specifically for me, as a data scientist, AI scientist, I have been doing AI for last 2 decades, specifically in School of Medicine since 2015. Yes, Wake Forest has a lot of great things. AI needs data. We have more than anyone can have, linked to patients, real patient data. But I think what makes the difference is the vision. Whether you want to be, especially in the AI in medicine, whether you want to lead the field or you want to follow the lead. Whether you want to wait Stanford, Harvard, MIT to do the work, others to test, and then you implement, be a follower. I think what I see is Wake Forest is doing it a different way. Wake Forest has this vision that we want to lead the domain. They are taking this approach that now we don't want to do just AI research. We want to translate it. We want to see that it is helping our patients, and we can also help others to use it. So I think this vision makes a difference like a day and night, and I'm so happy and proud to be part of it here.
Sorry about this. me reminding myself to applaud these wonderful scientists. No, I can't get it off. I need the AI specialist to help me. All right. So are there any questions? If you do have one, raise your hand. Yes, go ahead, please.
A lot of mistakes. And so it's okay if I'm in my field and, I can sort of say, hey, that sort of looks wrong, and then I can look it up. But if I'm kind of outside my scope, it gets a little bit worrisome because that's why I'm looking it up. So twofold question. Number one, let's use the example of the 20 million EKGs. Let's just say we're looking at LVH as a precursor for CHF. How do you have a system of checks and balances to say, hey, that's just not right? That's my take-home question. And then one follow-up for Dr. Boulware. When we were at the Medicine Forward last week, we talked about teaching medical students. And so, in my day, we went to that thing called a library and looked up an article and read it and looked at the treatment and the placebo and so on. And now I'm just concerned that it's such a shortcut that you can really get bad quality information. Thanks.
Wonderful question. So we try to be very careful because, again, we are not just trying to do AI for publication. Our ultimate goal is to bring it to patients. So we do phased approach. In the first approach, we developed the AI model. And we test it with the data we have. And then, okay, it's work with certain accuracies, whether it's acceptable or not. And then if it is acceptable, we take it to completely different demographics. And then we test it over there. If I may put it in a body, with the heart failure detection model developed at the Wake Forest, it worked over 1 million ECG we used. And we took it to Tennessee, from Memphis, completely different demographics, 65% African American population versus more white dominant population here. Model works with the exact same accuracy. We didn't stop there. We took the model to Turkey, blinded validation, works with the exact same accuracy. So first approach is the data science approach, using the data science, how we can make sure that this model is stable, generalizable, and robust. Second is the phase approach in terms of implementation. What we are doing right now is that we built the system in our family medicine. We are not taking any into action right now. We are just running the model on the background to see in the prospectively it is really working how it does in the retrospective model data. And then we are showing this to our physicians who would be the one making decisions and waiting to see if they are okay with this result. So basically, we really acknowledge the issues you raise here, and we really want to be very careful and doing the phase approach until it checks off from the physicians who will use this AI model. We want to do all the tests, either clinical or the data science approach, so that when we act based on the AI decision on recommending an echo or lab test or medication, that we will be confident that it is not only data science approach, this is confirmed by clinicians that now it is ready for use. And also we take it to the FDA for their approval, like you would develop a medicine. We take this, they are called software as medical device. We are also following through the FDA regulatory pathway, so that it would also be validated, approved by the regulatory authorities.
So lots of validation. With regard to your question on medical education, it's a really big question that we're grappling with right now. We know that our students are using AI to support their studies, but we also believe very strongly that their humanism, their ability to interact with human to human is really they're going to be their strongest asset moving forward. It will no longer be the facts, only learning those facts. It's going to be learning complex medical reasoning, critical thinking, and that human-to-human interaction. And we know that there's a lot more information that you can get when you're sitting in front of somebody talking to them than you would get necessarily from the listing of the facts that you might have in a note or something. So we're really grappling with that. Our students are aware that there's a potential for, what we don't want them to do is become lazy. I call it laziness in the sense of, I think I said it at the Medicine Fort. I remember the days when we used to be able to take out a map. We couldn't go anywhere without that paper map. And now none of us know how to read a map, because our phone takes care of it. So we've let that skill go. There are some skills we know that we cannot let the students let go as they become humanistic physicians. So we're really focused in on that, and we're beginning to weave that we've got a task force is working on how to weave that, the awareness of how to use AI as tools, helpful tools, but not to replace their skills as critically thinking, empathetic, humanistic physicians. So that's the answer there. I'm going to ask a question while I'm waiting. I noticed each of you, this session actually is about purpose. But even without it being about purpose, I could hear that in each of your presentations. The importance of the patient, the importance of going for solving that real problem. Can you talk to us about how that drives or inspires you in your work? How does that come into your day-to-day? We're always doing our things. We've got all kinds of things on our mind. How do you use that vision of what we're trying to achieve, that purpose? How does that drive you? We could start here, Dr. Akbilge.
Sorry. I think we are really grounded with the goal of we want to help our patients. We don't want to do I don't want to do AI just to do AI. So I want to do first, I want to find the clinical problem, whether AI solves it or not. If the answer is yes, okay, now let's use AI. Because again, our purpose is to improve patient outcomes, improve the healthcare system, so find the bottlenecks and solve them. But if we use AI, does it really change the outcome? That's another question. That's another study we do. If it is changing the outcome, well then, whether this AI model we develop is going to be aligned with our actual purpose, is it going to change the outcome in a maintainable, sustainable manner? If we can all this have these answers, and then we do. If not, we just focus on other problems that are more aligned with our purpose.
Thank you. Dr. Tala?
Thank you, Dr. Bower. It's interesting, for me personally, it's been my own patients. That is what's driven my drive for getting into these technologies. And the very first time happened when I was in training, in my fellowship training, and a patient came in who was a 9-year-old. And the patient was brought in from Vermont to our center. And because they were in the intensive care unit, and they had just had a bladder surgery about a year ago, but they didn't know what was going on with that patient. And then when the patient came to the ICU to this children's hospital, the patient died within a few hours. And what it was an undetected perforation of the bladder that had been augmented with a piece of intestine. And so that's what basically said, I said to myself, well, this is crazy. We're putting something that doesn't belong there. Why don't we create something that belongs there, which is their own tissue? And that's been a driving thing. I think as a surgeon, we all, no matter where you are, whether you are a medical doctor or a surgeon or in a medical center doing basic research, you can't help but be driven by the patient need. And, I've seen it firsthand, but I know that my colleagues here are seeing it every day too, through the work that they do. And so I think that's what makes our place here at Wake Forest so special, because we can have that connection with our patients and our researchers.
Thank you. Dr. Baker?
Purpose for us, I'm going to maybe not repeat what you've just said, Tony, about the patient being a center of our purpose, which is true for me. Older adults have been my mentors from day one, and so those are my people. And so those are the folks that I want most to help hopefully to combat ageism at some point. But I think to add to something new, our purpose is to, in this particular trial, was to figure out how to test implementation or test running of this trial using community partners. Because if we just run this trial and we don't interface with our community and we get a positive result, then what, it's going to be another 10-year study with another $50 million to get us to another place where we can actually help people. So our purpose was to make sure that we put all of the pieces in place so that we could, from the moment we have a positive trial, hopefully way back when, that we could start with implementation. There are so many people who are at risk. Our population is just that way right now. Those are our characteristics. There's so many people at risk, but they're not yet cognitively impaired. If we could get to them now and help them correct some of not correct, but alter some of their behaviors, what if we could reduce the onset of cognitive impairment, or at least delay it, which would have significant implications for healthcare cost, family burden, and patient care. So it still comes back to what Tony was saying, but really, how can we do this well so that we can roll it back into the community right away so that it's sustainable? That's actually very different than a lot of clinical trials in my field. You do the clinical trial to do the clinical trial, and then someone else can worry about how to put it into the community. That is not what we wanted to do.
Excellent. Go ahead, question there, and then one here.
I actually don't have a question, but really a comment. I'm the MD class of 1981, and I appreciate what you're saying about your purpose. As I sit here and listen to this, I reflect back on the fact that, I was a clinician and saw one patient at a time, and, I felt purpose to try to make that patient better. What I really appreciate hearing about this today and having the opportunity to tour the regenerative medicine clinic earlier today is that scientists such as yourselves, which are working on these broader problems, you have a chance that your work will impact thousands upon thousands of people at one time. So I applaud you for how you approach your careers that way, and appreciate the fact that you're here at Wake Forest doing it, because I imagine most people in the room appreciate the culture here at Wake Forest.
Yes. Here?
Yes, my background's in primary care medicine and public health. And Dr. Baker, what are you, with the compelling story that you have put out there now through media of the results of your trial, we have a lot of narratives in public health that are really confusing the picture. Social media is running with them, and I think it takes away from potentially the impact of what you're trying to do. Could you comment on that? Have you run into, kind of narratives that are making it harder for you to get your message out and into the community?
Yeah, are you talking about narratives in particular related to the media coverage that we got? Is that?
Well, it's more the public, when you go on social media, you might have somebody who's making another claim about how to, prevent or forestall dementia and Alzheimer's, and so social media will snowball, and people will get this other idea, but and the research that they might be citing is not nearly as robust and well designed as yours.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for that. That it is a problem. People want a quick fix. They want to do something quickly and not very much. And what is the big bang, benefit I'm going to get out of it? That's the biggest question I always get. How little can I get away with? I said, well, it comes with positive side effects. The more you do, the more you are going to be empowered. You are going to become a different person. And there's so many positive aspects of that. So to answer more specifically to your question, what we hear a lot is, first of all, we really push and educate. We try to provide research literacy to all of our participants to evaluate, think for themselves, make sure that it's been through a clinical trial, a rigorous clinical trial with more than 10 people, maybe, and that it was published. So that there's some supplements and other supposed therapies out there that have been claimed as going to change you're going to change your trajectory. We talk about those very clearly as part of our intervention. Now we the idea is that when we implement this kind of an intervention into public health, that research literacy is going to be part of that education for that reason. My fear is that people spend money that they should not spend. They have hopes for therapies that do not work, and when they think what we had to offer is too hard. That's what we've heard. How can you ever get people to do what you ask them to do? But I remind them that we had people at risk. They were not exercisers. They had a lot of room for improvement. They were going down the wrong path. They were heading to cognitive decline. We changed them. They changed themselves. We encouraged them. It was up to them. And we had 95% retention, and our adherence to the intervention was, over 85%. So can we change people who think it's too hard? No, it has to do with the approach. So a lot of times people want to, the exercise. You need to exercise, or eat this diet, and this is what you're going to see. Our pointer package was not just what to do, it was how to do it, how to stay connected with other people to help you, stick to the path, and when you fall, to help you get back up again. That's life. It's never going to be, for any of us, a straight path, and it's the getting back up that is as important as what you do. And that was, so a lot of people don't want to listen to that part of it. They want the pill, the magic pill.
I think that this last question also really brought for me thoughts about trust in science and trust in medicine. What we're seeing relative to where people are getting their information and such has been an erosion in trust in science and medicine. So that people are getting information from social media, they're often getting disinformation, they're getting louder voices about the disinformation than the more factual, evidence-based science. And so I wonder, help us think about this, what can we do better? You all are doing groundbreaking, truly impactful research that's improving people's lives. But yet we have a whole nation of individuals who don't trust what you're doing. I think it's somewhere around 30% level trust in science. What are we doing about getting the word out? What are your thoughts about that? How do we improve that? Because we're all here to improve lives. We want clinicians to trust us, and we need, more importantly, the individuals that we're treating to trust us. So, Dr. Atala, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Dr. Bower. Boy, goodness, that's the elephant in the room. It really is, and when it comes to, so I'll give you, let me start broadly about Regen Med, for example, which is what we would deal with. Well, I'm sure you've all in your communities have seen newspaper ads that you open up the paper and it says stem cell treatments will cure everything from Alzheimer's to, Parkinson's and every orthopedic disorder. Well, the fact is all these technologies are always people out there that are trying to do the wrong thing and trying to really, to take the easy way out. All these technologies, by the way, beware, because all these technologies, what they're doing is they're putting cells in your body that leave the body within 24 hours. None of those cells stay around, right? And that's very well known scientifically. Those cells go in your body, within 24 hours they're totally gone. They're active as an anti-inflammatory. And then people go around saying how great they are for two reasons. They are anti-inflammatory, so they have the same effect as a steroid shot. But the only difference is you're going to spend either $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for this treatment, or you can get a $20 steroid shot. Because how many times have you had a sore shoulder or a joint where you get a steroid shot and it's gone forever? And that's, those are the people out there saying, oh, this treatment works. And then everybody else goes in and pays their $20,000. The other problem is the placebo effect that you all know about. You know the placebo effect can be as high as 40%. So there's a lot that we don't understand about the mind and how the mind is so powerful that the placebo effect actually takes. No one understands the placebo effect, right? What a great area of study. So that's the general piece. Now to the personal piece, I think we have to do a better job as physicians to really spend the time with our patients, and that relationship that we used to have with patients, has really evaporated in many places because of the pressures of the system. But I have to say that that's not really the heart of Wake Forest. That's really not where the Wake Forest. I just need to make that point that that is not where the heart is, right? When you hear Gene Woods and our CEO, when you hear our Dean Ballware, when you hear our leaders, what they want is the best care for our patients. That's what they want. And I do think, okay, so I'm going to just go to I do think that AI is actually going to help with that. Because how often do you go into the physician's office and the whole time they're there typing in their computer, right? And they're not even looking at you because they got to get the medical records done. Well, enter AI. Now I just put my cell phone down, I turn it on, I have the entire visit with a patient, and now it goes straight into my medical record, and I have a full note that I can edit. And I can edit the note. Now, there's a danger to that because you don't want to put that whole note in there because it's got a lot of stuff in there you don't want. But you have something you can work with. So I think that actually education, more patient interaction, and really just having more health-related education in our community, and really making sure that our community, that all the citizens in our community understand what healthcare is all about. And we're very good at treating the patient, but we're not as good as educating our community and our citizens. And that's really where the key is.
Great answer, thanks. Dr. Akbilgic, trust?
It is one of the areas I'm really, really passionate about. If you go to internet, YouTube, say how to stay healthy diet, fit, probably 90% of the recommendations, videos you get wouldn't be from professionals. It will be from fitness coaches, influencers. It is really hard to compete with them. Like someone with 3 million followers, just all they do is like cooking, which is wonderful, but they also say that you need to eat this way so that you wouldn't have this disease, but if you did, you shouldn't. Some of those videos you watch, they should go to jail. Some claims they do. I mean, how do you make these claims? But it is there. It's the reality. Same with the ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a wonderful resource, like I mentioned. But I can complain day and night, but we need to do something. One of our dream is to do safer version of them. Yes, there are a lot of misinformation, but we should just do the better versions and deliver it to patients. So now, in that line, what I really am passionate about doing it is can we do Wake Forest ChatGPT? You are our patient. You log in to a safe portal like you are doing. So you don't feel, you are not afraid that your information will be leaked. But the information you are getting back is, this AI model not developed only on this garbage data that is available on the internet, specifically developed on the patient data. When I say patients, we have billions of those notes, clinical notes. What happened to patient? What were the symptoms? What was the follow-up? What happened to those patients? Now we can develop a better version of it, safer version, and deliver it. I feel like this is one of the way we can fight this back.
Great answer. Dr. Baker.
Just real quick, I think I'll just add something that we learned in US Pointer. And when our folks come to see us in the clinic for all their assessments, they're with us like 3 hours. By the time they leave, we are their family. And so I think taking more time with our patients and using AI to help us. We have so many people of our participants who say that their physician is not have even looked at them the whole time in their office. Really hard to build trust when you can't look at your patient in the eyes. So I feel like we do a pretty good job here. I've been in other institutions where that's not, where I take my mother for her health care. It's very frequent that they've never even looked at my 92-year-old mother because, she's old.
Oh, boy. Well, those were amazing answers. We're at the end of our sessions. We're so proud. Thank you so much for a fantastic presentation, and thanks to all of you for engaging.